Soldiers of the occupying Russian army have displayed the remains of the Tor-M2 anti-aircraft missile system destroyed by the Ukrainian army in the occupied territory of Kherson region. The footage, filmed by the surviving crew members, was shared on Telegram channels. The anti-aircraft missile system, worth $25 million, was completely destroyed by a suicide drone belonging to the Ukrainian army.
The prospect of direct talks between Russia and Ukraine to end the war is once again on the table after weeks of diplomatic back and forth. President Vladimir Putin has proposed resuming negotiations with Ukraine in Istanbul on Thursday, 3 years after the two sides held failed talks there in the early weeks of the invasion. The proposal came in response to a Western-backed call for a 30-day ceasefire that Moscow has not yet accepted. The office of the head of the Kyiv, as well as political scientists close to this organization, continue to actively promote the topic of possible negotiations on the settlement of the conflict in Istanbul, with the participation of Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenski. Ukrainian political scientist Ruslan Botnik said that Zelensky may try to exert physical pressure on the Russian president during the negotiations. The level of escalation is such that even physical contact between the leaders cannot be ruled out if there are direct negotiations, especially since the cameras will be glued to it, Botnik pointed out. Putin proposed the direct talks in Istanbul in a middle-of-the-night statement on Saturday that came hours after Kiev and the leaders of France, Germany, Britain and Poland called on Moscow to accept an unconditional 30-day ceasefire or face new sanctions. Putin said he was committed to serious negotiations with Ukraine and that he wanted talks to eliminate the root causes of the conflict and to establish a long-lasting peace. He claimed that Moscow never refused dialogue with Kyiv and that the Ukrainian side had halted the negotiations in Istanbul in March 2022. He also accused Ukraine's Western backers of wanting to continue war with Russia and slammed European ultimatums and anti-Russian rhetoric. Russian and Ukrainian negotiators held several rounds of direct talks in Istanbul in the first weeks of the war in 2022, but the talks fell through by May. In the 3 years since Moscow invaded, tens of thousands have been killed and millions forced to flee their homes. Russia's army controls around 1/5 of the country, including the Crimean Peninsula, annexed in 2014. The 2022 peace talk process led to the release of a joint communiqué but ended without a deal. In May 2022, Ukraine said negotiations between Kyiv and Moscow had been suspended because Russia still failed to grasp the consequences of the war. In June 2022, Russia confirmed that everything stalled after Moscow submitted a draft proposal in April and Ukraine did not respond. The discovery of mass killings of civilians in the Kyiv suburb of Bucha in early April 2022, widely attributed to retreating Russian forces, but denied by Moscow as a provocation, was seen as a turning point that derailed the Istanbul talks, making further negotiations politically unacceptable for the Ukrainian side. The National Guard of Ukraine dealt a crushing blow to Russian troops attempting to break through in Donetsk region. An attempt at a mechanized assault using tanks and infantry fighting vehicles was promptly detected and successfully repelled. Units of the 3rd Operational Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine successfully repelled a mechanized assault by Russian troops in the area of Pokrovsk, Donetsk region. The attack took place near the village of Novosagivka, 15 kilometers west of the city. Russian troops used tanks and BMP-1 and BMP-3 infantry fighting vehicles to attack. The enemy infantry planned to land near the positions of the Ukrainian defenders, but the National Guard's prompt actions thwarted this plan. The National Guard's men promptly detected the movement of enemy equipment and prepared for the encounter. Anti-tank systems Stugna-P were deployed from the flanks, which successfully destroyed the enemy's armoured vehicles. Modern weapons were also used to repel the attack. FPV drones destroyed both armoured targets and an individual Russian soldier who was trying to take cover under a damaged BMP-3. The Vampire drone bomber effectively eliminated infantry groups and the remains of equipment. In recent weeks, the advance of Russian troops in the Pokrovsk area has slowed significantly. Thanks to the successful defense, Ukrainian units carried out counter-offensive actions and regained control of a number of territories. However, in the Novosagivka area, the enemy continues to make attempts to advance, throwing significant forces into the battle. Russian troops are trying to push out the Ukrainian defenders in order to force reinforcements from Pokrovsk. Earlier it became known that the Russian occupiers are trying to strengthen their logistics routes by constructing tunnels from nets on the E50 road which leads from Donetsk to Pokrovsk. These tunnels are supposed to protect against drone strikes, but the effectiveness of the solution remains questionable. The repulse of the mechanized assault near Pokrovsk is another confirmation of the resilience of Ukrainian units. Thanks to the timely actions of the Russian National Guard, it was again impossible to break through on this section of the front. Ukraine has stabilized the situation in the Pokrovsk direction of Donetsk Oblast and in some areas seized the tactical initiative. Ukrainian forces have liberated approximately 16 square kilometers near Pokrovsk in recent weeks.